All right, with all the news out of the way, let's talk about some book reviews. I know I haven't really done a lot of book reviews lately, and it's mainly because I've been busy with the grain elevator and getting some other things done. And for those of you that don't know, my first youngin's on the way, so we've been doing a lot of stuff that has to do with that. But I finally have gotten around to finishing a couple of novels that I wanted to talk to you guys about for a little bit. I'm about halfway through Thrawn right now. So keep an eye out for that review. It's coming very soon. I'm loving it so far. I'm just over halfway through. I'm absolutely loving this book so far. But first, I want to talk about Master and Apprentice by Claudia Gray. This is a book that I was extremely excited for. I was looking forward to this book so much, especially after Claudia wrote the short story by the same name in the group of short stories for the 40th anniversary of the From a Certain Point of View stories. This is an Obi-Wan Qui-Gon book. It's mainly a Qui-Gon Jinn novel. And this is the first novel to take place in the new canon pre-Phantom Menace, before the events of Episode 1. And it's about, I think it's like 8 years before Episode 1. Obi-Wan Kenobi is 17 years old in this movie. He and Qui-Gon have been together, I think, for 2 years at this point, I think is what it said in the book. I like this novel quite a bit. It's obviously Claudia Gray. She's the queen of Star Wars canon as far as I'm concerned. Her and Timothy Zahn are the king and queen. That's it. So, and anybody who's been watching knows that all three of Claudia Gray's other novels are my top 3 novels in the Star Wars canon. Loved all 3 of them. I did like this book quite a bit, but it is my least favorite Claudia Gray novel that she's written. I did enjoy it quite a bit. The first half of it was a little slow for me. There were a couple of nuggets in there with Jedi prophecy that was going on that getting dropped. Stuff about the Chosen One. Some other prophecies that happen where you're like, is that talking about Leia and Kylo? Like, there's other things that make you think, right? So it's kind of slow at first. But halfway through, man, it picks up and it runs. It goes and it goes and it goes. And it just took me a little bit of time to get to that point. And once I hit that point, it took off. At the beginning of this book, the main basis of the story is that Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are having kind of a hard time connecting. Mainly because there's such different types of Jedi. Obi-Wan's very by the book, follows the rules of the council, all this other stuff. Qui-Gon is quite the opposite. Throws the rule book out the window, screw the Jedi Council, stuff like that. So they butt heads quite a bit. And Qui-Gon is trying to come up with a way. Well, I shouldn't say trying to come up with a way. He's starting to worry that he's going to lose Obi-Wan as an apprentice, and maybe that would be the best thing for Obi-Wan. And he receives an invitation from the Jedi Council to sit on the council. And the council kind of sees it as killing 2 birds with 1 stone, kind of Qui-Gon coming onto the council. And because he'll be on the council, he can't have a Padawan, so they'd have to transfer Obi-Wan to somebody else. And Qui-Gon says, I'll think about it. Then they go on this mission together. I'm not going to ruin anything for it, but that's kind of where it goes. He doesn't tell Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan finds out on his own. And then that causes this point of contention between the two throughout the rest of the book that they have to overcome to actually become Master and Apprentice, the way we see them in Episode 1. It's no spoiler, they stay together. We've seen Episode 1, we know how it goes. But when this book takes off, it is awesome. And then when you see how they actually do bond, absolutely great. Another thing that this book does is it has these preludes in it, right? They started doing these in Aftermath, and they worked best so far out of everything. They worked best in Aftermath. But these were interesting too, and these were kind of a time jump also, which they started with Last Shot, which Last Shot was pretty low on the list for me. If you guys watched the novel ranking video, you know what I'm talking about. But that book was all over the place with time jumps between like 3 different time periods. Boom, 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 boom. I mean, just all over the place. Thrawn Alliances did it a little bit, but it wasn't as hard to keep track of because it was between Thrawn and Anakin and Thrawn and Vader. So those two it was easy to tell. This one just simply goes back in time a little ways and shows Qui-Gon as the apprentice of Count Dooku. Now, one thing I did learn from this book is that I always thought Dooku left the Order after the events of Episode 1. I was wrong. At least, maybe I was wrong. I never really read that much into the EU with Dooku. If I'm wrong about that, let me know. I'd like to hear about that. But in the canon now, Dooku left the Order. He'd already left by the time this novel's happening. So 8 years pre-Phantom Menace. But when it cuts back to when Qui-Gon was an apprentice, you start to see how Qui-Gon and Dooku got along. and you start to see a little bit of the slip into the dark side with Dooku. And it's actually a blast to read. Like, one of the scenes where Dooku really starts to go dark is like, I got chills reading it. I was like, oh my God. So this is a really fun book to read once you really get into it. At least for me, once I got into it. By the time the book was over, I was very satisfied with where Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan's relationship was, where their points of contention kind of faded, what they had in common, what they didn't have in common anymore. Like, it was a lot of fun to read. And the epilogue of this book, if you guys have read Claudia Gray's book, Leia, Princess of Alderaan, then you know the last line of that book is a gut punch to whatever set of genitalia you have. It hurts to read that last line. The entire epilogue of this novel is the same way. It's not just a one-liner like it was in Leia. This is an entire epilogue, and it hurts to read. It's hard, but it is so good. And don't get me wrong. Now, I'm not going to say that this novel is... I'm not going to say it's in the top 4 with the rest of the Claudia novels. I'm going to say top 15. I'm going to say top 15 novels, which out of 40-some-odd novels isn't bad still. Take that into consideration. Top 15 for me. It was a lot of fun to read, but there's a lot of other novels that were more fun to read. There were some that were a lot harder to get through than this one, but this one kind of has that balance. So if you're looking forward to reading it, I definitely say go check it out. Definitely go pick it up. I don't think you're going to be disappointed in it. So take that as you will.